Up next, meal planning. Now, I'm a chef, and so I spend a lot of time thinking about cooking, right? And I think when I'm talking to people about improving their diets or cooking more at home, really that's the part that they're concerned about, right? When the food hits the pan. But I'm here to tell you that actually most of the work, I think, of cooking comes before any food hits the pan. And it comes here at this stage, meal planning. So we're going to try to break it down and make it easy for you. So I'm not here to tell you that it's super easy, it doesn't take any effort. Meal planning definitely takes time and effort, so I want to acknowledge that up front. But I promise you it's worth it. You will save time in the end by doing some planning. So step one is to say to yourself, how many home-cooked meals am I going to want to eat, and when do I want to make and eat them? So I like to plan 1 week at a time. You know, some folks maybe like to go grocery shopping every 2 weeks. I would recommend you plan 2 weeks at a time, right? It's pretty hard to grocery shop, I think, any less than 2 weeks at a time. But really plan out your meals, maybe a week at a time, and start there. You might want to consider planning on the same day every week, especially if you're someone who really likes a routine and finds it easier to stick to habits if you have kind of that routine. Maybe every Saturday you want to plan out what you're going to make for the week, go shopping, and then on Sunday do your meal prep, right? For me, I tend to give myself Monday to just get back into the swing of things right at the beginning of the week. And then I do my meal planning on Monday nights. And then I actually do the grocery shopping and start making those meals on Tuesday every week. So consider when you might like to do that planning. And as you're doing this, ask yourself, which meals am I going to be eating at home this week? I had a work dinner last night. I didn't need to make food for last night at home, and I didn't want to be planning on needing to eat leftovers last night before they go bad, right? Because I knew I would be out. Maybe on Thursday you like to do happy hour with your friends and you have some noshing there. Again, think about when will you be eating at home versus not. And then say, of those days where I'm going to be eating at home, on which days will I be cooking? If you have a family, you may find yourself cooking every day, essentially, right? And that's hard to escape sometimes. I'm cooking for one, and so I do not cook every day of the week. And so you might say to yourself, I don't need to be cooking every day, nor do I maybe have the time or the desire to cook every day. So on what days am I going to be cooking? On what days do I have a lighter schedule and I'm going to be able to accommodate that time and energy spent cooking? And then this is where you kind of check in with yourself and say, how much spontaneity do I like? Do you want something that's totally planned? 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, you want that all planned in advance. I bet most of us aren't like that. If you are, go for it. Plan it all out. For me, I like most of my dinners planned, I would say, in advance. And then breakfasts and lunch, I kind of leave to the fridge, right? I have some things on hand. I like some spontaneity. Sometimes I'll be going out with friends or eating leftovers, etc. I leave some flexibility there. And maybe 1 day a week, I will put together a pantry meal kind of spontaneously. Really ask yourself, how much spontaneity do I like? And then kind of plan your meals from that. Step 2. Which meals do you want to cook? And there's actually a lot of thought that has to go into this, right? The first thing that I would recommend asking yourself is, when does this food need to be used by, right? Because if we can minimize food waste, then we can save some money. So produce, of course, notoriously goes bad very quickly, right? So you might want to buy some produce that's going to only last a couple days in your fridge, right? Which is things like berries. And then some greens, you know, when you're buying those, always buy the ones with the latest expiration date so they have the best chance of staying there in your fridge before they go bad, right? You don't want that box of spinach kind of wilting in the back corner of your fridge and then you throw it away at the end of the week, right? So think about produce first and foremost. That's most likely to go bad the fastest. Look at those expiration dates, especially for things like dairy and eggs, right? And then eat leftovers, definitely. But understand that really you can only stretch leftovers to about 5 days. I've made the mistake many times, my friends could tell you, of stretching leftovers a little too far, and I've paid the price. Don't be like me. Leftovers are good for about 5 days. Then say to yourself, how many times am I willing to eat leftovers this week? Some people do all of their cooking on Sunday. They eat the same thing the next 6 days, right? Again, I'm a little concerned about that Saturday after you've stretched those leftovers for nearly a full week. But also, I'm just not the type of person who can eat the same thing every single day, right? I'm willing to eat something leftovers 2 or 3 times, right? So this means when I'm making a recipe, if I'm going to eat it all that week, I'm really not going to make anything more than about 4 servings. If I want to freeze some of it, which is another good tip, maybe I will make a double batch, 8 servings. I'll freeze half of it and I'll eat 4 servings of it that week, right? So think about how many times you're willing to eat leftovers. Think about how to reuse leftovers. You, if you're interested, can check out my spot on Netflix, Best Leftovers Ever, right? Where the whole purpose of the show is taking leftovers and figuring out creative ways to reuse them. This is something I think most chefs are doing in their home kitchen, right? Think about buying a rotisserie chicken. You eat it one night, it's delicious, but that can become quesadillas, that can become burrito bowls, that can become sandwiches, right? You can use that carcass to make stock, right? Think about how to take something that you bought for one purpose and made on one night and how to incorporate that into your meals the rest of the week, kind of inventing them over again or reusing them. Think about how many new recipes you want to make in one week. I bet you have some standbys, things that you just really like to make. You can make without a recipe. It always hits. You could eat it once every 1 to 2 weeks, right? For me, that's a Caesar salad. I love a Caesar salad with some air-fried crispy chickpeas or some chicken thighs that I've kind of browned up in a pan and then shredded, right? Lots of options for your go-to recipes. When you're making a new recipe, that takes a lot more mental power, right? To really read through that new recipe. You hope it works. You haven't really optimized your technique yet, right? So don't try to make 7 new recipes per week. Look at the week you have ahead of you and say to yourself, how many new recipes can I make this week? And be realistic. Batch cooking and pre-portioning can be a great way to do things. I really like to make a soup, especially during the winter months, on a Sunday afternoon after church, and then I batch it up into portions, keep those portions in my fridge, and then I can just heat them up quickly in the microwave, right? So thinking about how you can do that batch cooking and pre-portioning in advance so that you're not having to go and ladle out the soup every day. That's just one more reason for you to say, oh, I don't have the energy to do that. I'm going to go to the cafeteria or something like that, right? So making it in advance and then pre-portioning it out. Try using pressure cooker or slow cooker meals, right? Things that you just dump it in the pot, you let it go. If you're doing a pressure cooker meal, that can make something come together very quickly at the end of a long day. Or if you want to do a slow cooker meal, you throw it in at lunch or before you go to work, and it's done when you get home, right? So thinking about using some of those tools to help you. I mentioned earlier that I'm someone who likes variety. I want to eat a lot of different food throughout the week. But if you're the kind of person who doesn't mind eating the same thing every day, I have good news for you. It's sometimes much easier for folks like you to eat more healthfully. You plan a couple of recipes, you cook a whole bunch, you eat it all week, right? So think about if you can be the kind of person who eats the same thing for breakfast every morning. Do overnight oats, right? Or if you're this person who can eat kind of, again, these leftovers many days in a row. And if you want some variety, I'm here to tell you that you're a little high maintenance, just like me, and it's going to take some more planning to make sure that the majority of what we're eating is plant forward and health promoting. And then if you're spending your lunch away from home, so if you're not working at home, if you have to be at the lab or at work or at school, make sure you're planning on foods that will travel and heat well for lunch and that you have appropriate containers to kind of bring them. The last thing you want is it spilling all over in your backpack. Part of my strategy for minimizing food waste and planning out my meals is I buy foods that go bad really quickly, like I mentioned those berries, semi-quickly, and then not quickly, right? So that after the week is over, you've eaten up some of those things that don't last as long, but you still have a few things left that you bought at the grocery store a week ago that you can rely on until the next time you go to the grocery store. Finally, have backups. Even our best laid plans sometimes don't come to fruition, so always have some things in your pantry or your freezer or ideas of things you can quickly put together in your fridge that will work when needed in a pinch. Perhaps you have to stay too long at work one night and you plan to cook that night and you just can't. Or perhaps you're just not feeling super well someday and you had planned to cook that night and you can't. What can you throw together quickly as a backup? All right, step 3. How are you going to structure this, right? So are you someone who likes a lot of structure or some loose structure? And what do I mean by that? So my way that I like to do meal planning is I come up with a few recipes that I want to make that week, and then I put them as bullet points in my notes app on my phone. That's good enough for me. But perhaps you want something with a little more structure. You want to decide on which specific days you want to make which specific meals. Maybe you want to put events in your calendar, right? You're like, I want to cook on Tuesday night. I plan to be home at 6. I want it to take no more than 2 hours. So you put it from 6 to 8 p.m., an event in your calendar, and then you put the link in the notes part of your event in that calendar, right? So just know thyself and understand how much structure do you really want to put into this. Are you one of those people who are, want to go to the nth degree, basically, to do all the structure? Or is a little bit of flexibility good with you? Lots of resources to help with meal planning. So I'm going to throw up some QR codes here that you can see. Go ahead and pause the video if you want to, and then resume whenever you're ready. But these are some great resources from some really evidence-based sources that I've kind of personally vetted, and I think they provide really good advice on how to really make meal planning less cognitively stressful. We're also going to talk about how to use AI, right? So you can see the prompt that I put in here. I have some spinach and some pepper jack cheese in the fridge. Needs to be used. I want a meal that's quick, easy, healthy, cheap, and is basically just using these ingredients and maybe some random pantry staples. What can I do, right? So kind of outsourcing these complex tasks to something like AI. So this is what it came up for me. A spinach and pepper jack quesadilla. I think it has a really good idea of using some canned beans to add some plant-based protein. There's some ideas here for some aromatics, things that give our food a lot of flavor, like onion and garlic, some choices of spices and condiments. You can serve it with canned corn, as you can see here. So again, really good meal planning on the part of AI. Alternatively, if you don't want to just make one meal, you can have it make you an entire week of meals. So you can tell it, okay, I want to consume about 2,300 calories a day. I need about 100 grams of protein, and tell it your dietary restrictions, and ask it to prepare a week of meals for you. Again, using those adjectives: cheap, easy, healthy, delicious. And so when I did this with ChatGPT, it gave me 7 days of meals, and you can see an example of one of those days here. And then it even said, would you like me to put this in PDF with a grocery list to be prepped for batch cooking? So really thinking about how we can use these tools to take the cognitive load away from us and put it onto something else, making it more easy to implement these meal planning strategies for yourself at home. So now we have an idea of what we're going to make, right? Next step, making a grocery list. So keep a running grocery list. This is my biggest tip. Very many times in my life, I've run out of something and I said, oh, I'm going to have to remember to get that at the grocery store next week. And then, of course, I don't remember to get that at the grocery store next week. And then when I go to cook with it, I don't have it. So I keep my phone, like you probably do too, on me or near me at all times. And when I run out of something, I immediately add it to my grocery list. I recommend you do that too. Make sure your list includes a few key ingredients. So the first is pantry staples. These are some of the pantry staples that I like to keep on hand. I use onions and garlic and oil enough in all of my cooking that it's something I want to have on hand in my pantry at all times. So whatever your pantry staples are, be sure to keep some of those. You also want refrigerator staples. So I like to have some milk and some eggs and some yogurt and some of these other vegetables and kind of standbys that you see here at all times. We're all going to have different refrigerator staples, but again, think about those when you're preparing your grocery list. Freezer staples as well. I eat a lot of frozen vegetables because they are just as nutritious as fresh and sometimes even more nutritious. So I think sometimes people don't fully realize that, but they're picked at the peak of ripeness, flash frozen, and all of those nutrients are fully locked in. Do not feel guilty about using frozen vegetables. We'll talk more about that coming soon. So lots of frozen vegetables in my fridge. I use frozen fruits for desserts and for smoothies. And French fries is one of my favorites. You may feel surprised that I have that as one of my freezer staples, but you can find French fries at the grocery store that are just potatoes, a little oil, and salt. And if it's a health-promoting oil and you're not too terribly worried about your blood pressure, you can take those French fries, heat them up in the air fryer or in your oven, and you have crispy, delicious fries that are made of a starchy vegetable with really not too much guilt. And it's certainly a better option than going to your local fast food place and getting them deep fried, right? So thinking about kind of harm reduction strategies like that, sometimes I just want a French fry. Shrimp I like to keep in my freezer as well as my favorite meats. And then, of course, you want to add ingredients for your meals for the week to supplement your pantry staples. Not only meals, also snacks. And then think about food preservation, right? And so what do I mean by that? Shop for your pantry staples and all that stuff first. Then shop for your refrigerated foods. Then shop for your frozen foods. And then if you're getting ice cream, that's last. Get that at the last second because you want it to still be ice cream when you get home, not milk. So think about the order in which you're shopping. And when it comes to organizing your grocery list, You know, for many years, I didn't have an organization to my grocery list, and I would just throw things on there. But then what happens is you arrive to the grocery store, you're looking at your phone, and you're like, okay, what things do I need in this section? And then you're going through, you forget something, you have to double back to that section later. It's just not the most efficient way to do things. So for efficiency, organize your grocery list both according to store layout and item stability. So ShopRite is my favorite place to grocery shop here. As you can see, it's a big, beautiful new grocery store, wide open aisles, delicious produce. And this on the right is the real way that I make my grocery list. So there are some things I don't get at the grocery store. Those are up top. So alcohol, here in Connecticut, you have to get at a separate store. I get other specialty things elsewhere. I get my coffee at a local roaster. I get my bread at a local bakery, right? Things on Amazon, all of those things go up at the top. Everything below that, I get at the grocery store, starting with things that are right there when I walk in and don't have to be immediately refrigerated. Produce, deli items, toiletries, meds, shelf-stable ingredients, non-food things, which are like Ziploc bags and birthday cards and stationery, right? And then the refrigerated things are next, like we talked about, meat and seafood, eggs and dairy. Frozen food is last. So this is laid out both according to item stability and the store layout. So I have a very clear idea of when I walk in the store, I hit these things first, then these things, then I end with the frozen and the refrigerated foods, zip out the door, and drive home. So organizing your grocery list can save you a lot of time. In the next video, we're going to talk about what to do once you have all this meal planning done, once you have your grocery list together. What do you do when you're at the grocery store?